Hello, everyone. My name is Erkin Göçen, and I am a MA student from Boğaziçi University, Turkey. So today I'm planning to present my paper titled Soil Erosion in the Roman Empire Between Crisis Management and Environmental Exploitation. So let me start. So soil erosion is a part of our life and a serious problem which disrupts the balance of the natural environment and has the potential to damage the landscape severely. So this crucial problem, however, is not a new one, and it started with the first interaction between mankind and land, which makes it one of the oldest human-made ecological problems in our world. Even ancient authors realized humans' effect on soil and commented on the problem of soil erosion, having an understanding of not much different than ours. So soil erosion causes various problems, both concerning the earth and human life. The loss of fertile land is one of the most critical results of this natural phenomenon, and especially for agrarian societies, this can have destructive outcomes, causing deteriorations in production and dictating changes in land use. So the effects of soil erosion are also visible in the Mediterranean region during the Roman and Byzantine periods, with considerably higher rates compared to earlier times. Therefore, it's a problem that should always be considered while dealing with subjects like Roman agriculture and economy, although it's hardly possible to calculate the exact impact of this phenomenon on the economy or Roman agriculture productivity. It must be analyzed and considered among the possible reasons for the decline in certain aspects of life in ancient societies. So therefore, this paper thus aims to achieve this by focusing on soil erosion, mainly in the Eastern Mediterranean during the Roman and early Byzantine times, and search for its effects on past societies. So in the course of this paper, I will argue that soil erosion had a noticeable impact on the economies of the Roman and Byzantine Empire, both due to its severity and the countermeasures adopted to fight against it. So written sources from ancient authors, for example, are among the materials which show the implications, outcomes, and understanding of soil erosion. However, it is obvious that these authors, although they approached this subject through direct observation, did not have a scientific understanding. So therefore, one must be critical while dealing with them, also having in mind the rhetorical nature of these sources. Another type of data comes from geoarchaeological and sedimentological studies, which is started to draw more attention recently. However, it is still a challenge to find a correlation between the data they provide and the existing interpretations of the past, since the nature of the sources is so different. It is thus difficult to connect the new data with the old ones. Yet, through the examination of sediments collected from lake beds and valley floors, our sources informs us about the rate of erosion and the period it occurred most violently. Moreover, the archaeological remains can be considered as the last type of sources that give information concerning soil erosion, especially the structures which were built against the negative outcomes of erosion or as a result of these outcomes are significant to understanding this problem historically and how the past societies adapted themselves accordingly. So soil erosion is a natural phenomenon, which means it happens everywhere and at all times, even without the intervention of humans, and it is among the factors that shape the landscape of our world from the beginning. However, what is problematic in accelerated soil erosion is the imbalance between the amount of soil lost to external factors such as water and wind and the amount of new soil formation. In other words, more fertile lands are carried away mostly by the rivers than what the earth can produce, which results in the constant impoverishment of the soil, affecting productivity severely. As a result of new technological developments and the new types of data, scholars are now agreed that the intervention of humans was the primary reason for the Holocene erosion. However, the influence of human activity was not seen as the primary reason for the negative impact of soil erosion until the 1970s. And scholars like Claudio Vitapinzi and John Bintliffe promoted rather the natural and climatic factors. Therefore, as a criticism of these ideas, Carl V. Butzer later claimed that anthropogenetic factors were responsible for the problem of erosion, showing the recent scientific works based on pollen studies as evidence. which proves that there was no crucial climate change during the Holocene. For the human-made factors, deforestation and overgrazing can be given as the main topics of discussion. And there are different opinions concerning these activities during the Roman period. So deforestation, the exploitation of timber resources, is almost always given as the first and foremost reason by scholars while discussing soil erosion in Roman times. And most of this evidence comes from contemporary written sources. For instance, Strabo in his geography complains about the exhaustion of timber resources in Pisa for mainly shipbuilding and construction in Rome, and asserts that the city was prosperous once. So Pliny the Elder, in addition, asserts that there had been a woodland area in Memphis that consisted of giant trees. However, it was lost in its time. Another piece of information concerning the exhaustion of woodlands comes from Livy, who mentioned that Ciminian forest, which stood between Rome and Etruria, was more impassable before, but more sparse now due to deforestation. Moreover, Michael F. Handy asserts that this exploitation already began in the early Roman period and gives Pontus, Paphlagonia, Bithynia, and the Troad, Lycia and Pamphylia, and Cilicia among the regions which were famous for timber resources. Even though we must consider the exaggeration of the authors and the rhetorical aspect of the sources, it is clear that the Roman policies concerning the use of woodlands put serious pressure on ecological balance and resulted in the accelerated soil erosion together with the problems it brought. On the other hand, it seems that there is too much emphasis on the impact of deforestation and its size. Compared to today's practices, the Roman exploitation of timber was not an enormous event, and the mass deforestation started only with the industrialization. So therefore, lately scholars have started to put more emphasis on the factors other than deforestation, such as overgrazing. And new scientific studies are also instrumental in this situation. The article written by John M. Marston and Naomi F. Miller, for example, focuses on the agriculture and land use patterns in Gordion during the Roman period based on carbonized seeds found in animal dung. According to their interpretation of the data, this region was densely populated, not only around the city, but also on the uplands. And the primary crop during this period was breadwheat, which was not for the use of animals, but humans. This situation indicates that the herd animals were mainly pastured in the marginal highland areas, and the wild seeds in the animal dung point out severe overgrazing. Therefore, it could be argued that the Roman agricultural practices in Gordion caused a high soil erosion rate, mostly due to overgrazing, where we see no evidence for the overexploitation of timber after the Phrygian period. A comparison of the findings with Sagalassos and Amorium, although we do not have the same type of data, shows similar kind of practices, which also points out a general trend in Roman agricultural practices, at least in Anatolia. Furthermore, Sedeflio, in his work, observes a similar situation in ancient Apulia and argues that overgrazing was the primary reason for the deterioration of the soil resources of Apulia. Thus, it is reasonable to assert that Roman practices make the soil more susceptible to erosion, and overgrazing creates ecological problems more than deforestation. So we can see in the works of ancient authors that this correlation between the loss of vegetation and the gradual transportation of soil was already perceived by some. Plato, for instance, mentions all the fat and soft earth having wasted away, and only the bare framework of the land being left because of the loss of vegetation and the forests, and adds that the landscape of his time was a mere skeleton of a sick man. It is remarkable that Plato was fully aware of and knowledgeable about soil erosion and its outcomes and its negative impact. In a similar fashion, Pausanias also made observations about this subject in his description of Greece. Here, Pausanias clearly shows that he comprehended the relationship between the vegetation and the transportation and accumulation of the soil, which is in this case caused by the constant plowing of land. In addition, He also informed us about the problem of erosion in Asia Minor and the flood by the Meander River. So the negative outcomes of soil erosion should not be underestimated, and also are not restricted merely to the loss of fertile land, although it is one of the most destructive results of this phenomenon. Therefore, Butzer refers to the beginning of the interaction between humans and land as the opening of Pandora's box and as a rupture of ecological balance. Another significant outcome of soil erosion is the accumulation of alluvial deposits, mostly carried by streams in certain areas, such as valley floors and river mouths. In this case of valleys, this accumulated soil can be used in agriculture. However, according to Butzer, the restricted and deep nature of the valley floors is not a favorable place for agriculture. Therefore, the accumulation of soil in these areas hinders productivity. On the other hand, the soil, which was piled up on the mouth of rivers, created more serious problems. Today, these areas are among the most fertile and suitable places for agriculture, but the reason for this is that we have the necessary technology to drain these areas. However, in ancient times, there was no such technology, and the mouth of rivers consisted of unstable marshlands, although they contained the most fertile soil carried by rivers. Judson, for instance, mentions that in the last 2,000 years, the Meander River has carried so much alluvial deposit that the coastline was pushed 8 kilometers to the sea. In addition, these wetlands created a serious danger for the people since they were suitable for malaria, which even forced people to migrate from these areas. The Roman author and architect Vitruvius informs us of this issue by saying that the inhabitants of the town Salpia in Apulia had to be moved to a healthier place by the state, since the marshes created by the nearby river were causing more disease each year. In these examples, we can see the effects of soil erosion and its outcomes on the lives of people and the pressure on both the economy and infrastructures. The accumulated alluvial deposits on the shores do not merely create marshlands and cause malaria, but also affect infrastructures, especially harbors. In the Roman world, the sustainability of the cities heavily relied on connectivity, which was mostly made possible through maritime transportation. Therefore, the filling of harbors with silt carried by rivers was a significant problem, creating disruptions both in daily life and in the economy in general. According to Strabo, the Kaista River was accumulating silt on the shore of Ephesus, and since a mole was built there, this accumulation was making the harbor shallower each day. A similar example comes from the Roman Leptis Magna, based on archaeological remains. Here we observe the traces of an agger and dam, which were built in order to divert the flow of the river to another valley floor, since the silt accumulation caused by the river was harming the harbor of the city and the agricultural suburbs. So Butzer claims that the malarial marshlands of the Mediterranean region, which were formed 2,000 years ago, had their share in the decline of Greek and Roman economies. Although there is no direct evidence to confirm this claim, the situation shows that the effects of soil erosion were beyond the negative impacts on agriculture, but also disturbed the functioning of the economy and trade. The ecological balance, which was disrupted by the accelerated soil erosion, also has particular impacts on the rivers and their behavior. The alluvial deposits, which were carried along by rivers, also filled river beds to some extent and created raised and unstable river courses, which flooded more frequently than usual, sometimes changing their beds. So these floods, in addition to their destructive power, also had the potential to carry a considerable amount of silt to flooded areas, a fact that created particular problems in urban centers. Indeed, cities face the risk of being significantly damaged by extensive alluvial deposits. In this respect, Procopius, with his work De Aedificis, is particularly informative, as he mentions several instances of floods and their consequences, especially throughout Anatolia. One of the most interesting examples which Procopius reported in his work is about the city Tarsus and the flood of the Sindus River. Procopius mentions that the destructive impact of the flood in detail, But he also adds to his account the precautions that were taken by Justinian in order to prevent the flood from happening again. These were the preparation of another riverbed to divide the river into two different courses, decreasing its velocity, and also the construction of wider and stronger bridges. It seems as trying to control the flow of rivers and changing their beds were common practice to prevent the unfavorable outcomes of floods and soil erosion. However, these were not enough to stop these problems. According to Henry, the Indus River was responsible for covering the city with deposits up to 7 meters deep, and for the city now being some 13 kilometers further away from the coast than in the ancient period. So therefore, one of the pressures which soil erosion added to the concern of the state was the constant degradation of infrastructures and the need to renovate or rebuild them. So after a detailed analysis of soil erosion, its reasons and its outcome, it's possible to argue that this natural phenomenon was also a serious historical problem, especially during the Roman and early Byzantine periods. Written sources, archaeological remnants, and scientific studies altogether made it possible for us to see a whole picture complementing each other where there was something missing. In this way, we are able to interpret implications of soil erosion, although it is not possible to know for sure to what extent the erosion was influential on the wider structures of the empire, such as economy, trade, and agriculture. However, one thing is certain, the problem of erosion was a widespread one during the period in question and had a particular impact on subjects like agriculture, economy, infrastructures, and health. Calculating this exact impact might not be completely possible, yet contemplating on a subject like soil erosion and approaching it historically have the potential to develop our understanding of the complex relationship between humans and the environment. New research and scientific data have already started to change older conceptions and judgments about soil erosion, indicating overgrazing as the primary factor during Roman times. On the other hand, sources do not indicate frequent movement and migration due to the negative outcomes of soil erosion, which by itself shows us the successful methods that Romans adapted to fight against this natural phenomenon. At the same time, presents these infrastructure activities as an enormous investment of wealth and human power. In this sense, understanding soil erosion makes us see the dynamic relationship between humans and their surroundings, and the environment appears as an active player in people's lives, determining their actions and putting constant pressure rather than being a static observer. And this is my bibliography, and thank you for your attention.